My name is Nia. My name is Nia, and I'm a first-time voter. My name is Nia, and I'm a first-time voter. To vote as a young person really is just following in your ancestors' footsteps, because we know that in the past our ancestors didn't have this privilege or didn't have this right. It would be foolish of me to not do what they fought so hard to do. I feel as though our community is apprehensive about voting because we don't see politicians or elected officials who actually care about us. One thing that I definitely like to do to encourage first-time voters is make sure that they have political literacy. Make sure that they have the right information, whether it's through a Twitter thread or whether it's through an Instagram post, just making sure that they know what's happening with this bill, with this law. It really just makes them recognize like these things can affect you too. It's not just things that happen inside of your household, it's things that happen inside of other people's household as well. My graduation was supposed to be for Juneteenth, and my organization that I'm the lead organizer for, Freedom March NYC, held a massive protest, and we led people to Park Slope, Prospect Park. We had music, food, people handing out PPE supplies, as well as a graduation ceremony. Really, when people ask me, how do I get started in this work? How do I have my own organization? I just tell them, remember that you're never too young, you're never too Black. Especially to the young people out there, you're never ever too young to speak up and say something and speak your mind and actually be passionate about an issue. Like, you have that duty and you have a voice for a reason. I'm voting for the first time this 2020 election because I don't have the privilege to not vote.
Excuse me. Good evening. On behalf of Youth Speak Up co-founders, Dion Johnson Calhoun, Dr. Madyun, and myself, Tiana Adams, welcome to It's the 2020 Vote for Me. This is our second youth panel following Let's Keep It 100 on the School to Prison Pipeline, where our youth and experts held a dynamic discussion that yielded ideas that will be shared with local and national leaders. Our goal tonight is to have an in-depth conversation with our youth about the importance of voting and its impact on policy and law. The mission of Youth Speak Up is to provide a platform for youth to speak on issues that impact them. Voting is the most powerful form of community activism, empowerment, and accountability. The mission of Youth Speak Up is to empower our youth to use their voice in any dynamic or setting. Our youth have innovative ideas and create powerful movements. They are our future. According to CNN, as of yesterday, 1/3 of registered voters, approximately 75 million Americans, have participated in early voting. This number represents 56% of more than the 136.5 million total ballots for president in 2016. Historically, youth voter turnout is low, but there are signs the tide is shifting. In CNN polling, 51% of registered voters ages 18 to 34 say they are enthusiastic about voting this year compared to 30% in 2016. Lastly, new research from Trish College Circle at Tufts University reported voter registration among young people is higher now than in November of 2016. Approximately 4 million teenagers in the United States have turned 18 in 2020 and are now among the voting populace. Now, considered legal adults, they are expected to navigate the sometimes complicated voting system of registration, absentee ballots, finding polling locations, etc., alone, which can be cumbersome, and guidance is essential. Our goal at the end of this conversation is to further invigorate youth voters and provide insight, ideas, and solutions to the issues that impact them related to voting and policy issues. To those eligible voters that are frustrated with politics and want to skip the vote this year, I hope the voice of our youth and expert panel encourage you to participate so you can elect officials, vote for policies to help ensure our children's future is bright, free of obstacles to access the American dream. I encourage the youth and adult viewers to lean in and type questions and comments in the chat box. Finally, use the hashtag YouthSpeakUp on social media when sending your questions or comments. The movement is on Facebook page, You Speak Up, and IG at You Speak Up, the number 1. Now let's get the conversation going. The youth on my panel will be eligible to vote between 2026 and 2029. I am happy they are so eager to participate in this discussion. The youth on this panel will discuss what voting means to them and explain how adults and elected officials can encourage them to early vote process. I want to welcome London, Cassidy, and Jeffrey and Madison to the conversation. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for participating. All right, to kick off our conversation, I want to know, please raise your hand if you had a conversation with your family, your friends, or your teachers about politics, about voting, about anything related to the political process this year, especially the last few months. Raise your hand if you've had that conversation. Okay, London, Cassidy, Jeffrey, all of you all. So Cassidy, start us off. Can you please share with us what those conversations have been like with your family? Don't forget to unmute.
Hi, I'm Cassidy, and the conversations me and my family have been having about voting and political things this year have been about just the candidates running, about who they are, why do we think they're running, the things that they've been saying at the debate, or any other political events that they've been at.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Jeffrey, what have you and your family or friends or teachers have been talking about with this political process?
I mean, my grandpa was just talking to me about it, like today, like about how we fought for this right and stuff, like how we fought for this right through like generations, and we shouldn't waste this opportunity to vote. Every vote counts. So
your grandfather is absolutely right. Every vote does count. Logan, can you please share what you have been discussing with your family or friends?
I discussed with my mom about politics a lot, actually. We talked about like this year's candidates, and we talked about the multiple debates. And we have been talking about our about to be former president. And we just like talk about how in life, like there's only one chance to vote, and you have to do it now so that we end up having a good president, and we have a good people as everything, as school board, head of state, and all that stuff.
That is so true. London, what about you? What have you and your family been talking about, or friends even?
Me, my family, and my friends have been talking about how enthusiastic we are about this year's voting, and the candidates are very competitive, and that's what is keeping us very updated on the voting process this year. So we're very excited for seeing who comes out as our future president, and we do want whoever is eligible to vote because it's really important, and it will encourage us for these years of youth.
Very good. I want to stick with you, London. You said that you and your family are very excited about voting. Is voting a family affair? And do you get to go to the polls? How does that work?
I don't think it's our family affair, but we do usually every year we go with our mom in the car, and then we usually wait in the car. We usually are excited a little bit. We always have our energy inside of us, so it's like we're thinking about what years to come and the presidents of these years.
Yes, very good. So, Logan, do you get to go to the voting poll with your parents? And what is that experience like for you? You have to unmute, Logan.
My experience, I go with my mom usually, and when we go in, they're always like, "Oh, here's a voting sticker," like after you vote and stuff. And I'm always really eager because I'm like, "Mom, who are you voting for? Who are you voting for?" And she's like, "Logan, mind your business. Just mind your business." And I'm just like, I think I need to know this stuff. So that's my experience with voting.
It sounds like your mom needs to be more open with her political discussions, don't you think?
Yes.
Cassidy, what about you? You get to go to the polling place with your mom, but how do you feel about voting? Does it get you excited?
So usually, sometimes, most of the time, my mom votes. She is usually by herself, and we're at school or something like that. And so, I'm really excited. Like the last time she voted, I was excited to find out who she voted for. I would be like, "Who you voted for? Who'd you vote for?" And she'll be like, I'm not gonna tell you yet until they either announce it or before. And I actually am very excited about voting, although I don't get to yet. I'm very excited to see the results because this year is extra competitive because these past 4 or 5 years, a lot of stuff has happened with our recent president right now, Mr. President Trump. So I get really excited when my mom votes, or either if we go with her, I'm very excited to see it because I've never really actually seen like a voting place before. So I would love to see one and like get a cool sticker, because like when we could tell when she voted because she has the I voted sticker on. So I really like.
That sounds amazing. All right, I want to kick it back to Jeffrey. You said that you and your grandfather had a conversation about how, we fought so hard to get the right to vote and that we shouldn't waste our vote. So I want to know, based off everything that's going on TV, with I don't know, seems to be a split amongst political parties and whatnot, a lot of negativity in the news. Has that impacted your desire to want to go vote? Because you're just 4 short years away from voting.
I mean, not really. It hasn't really like impacted my want to vote. Like it's my right to vote. We fought, so like we deserve. Everyone deserves the right to vote. Like, so why shouldn't I do it? Even though with everything that's going on right now, even the debate, president being childish, it hasn't really affected my feeling towards voting.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that. London, has this current climate affected your wanting to vote in the near future?
This has not affected it, but it just has changed my thinking of it because you never know. It may be like the president is this thinking person in the debates, but when they come out to be the president, they may be this non-caring person who doesn't care about other people's opinions. So it hasn't really changed my thinking. It just has left me questionable of how like the future presidents will come to be. But I am very excited to vote for the years to come, and will very much take the chance to vote because of how the people fought for us to vote, and I just really appreciate it.
Yes, great. Hi, Madison. Thank you for coming back with us. So 2 questions for you. Why do you feel voting is important? And has the current climate made you not want to vote later on down the line when it's your turn? You need to unmute.
Well, voting, it matters because our life matters, and it also matters because we matter. It matters because the options that we get, our options matter, and it also matters because the way we are treated matters. And I would like to vote when I'm of age because whatever the candidate says, if I do or do not like it, my voice can make a change.
I love that answer. Okay, so our time is winding down. So I have one question I want each of you all to respond to, if possible. You all sound like you are enthusiastic future voters. What is one issue that is important to you that you wish politicians would pay attention to? One issue. Logan, can you start us off, please?
One issue that I think that politicians have now is they don't for our new voters, they don't really know. Well, most new voters are kind of like a little bit uneducated about voting. So I think that politicians, maybe they should like make a program for them to do research and learn about voting before they just go into the ballot and they just pick anybody and we end up with a not good president or a good president, but a lot of people voted for the other one. So
Cassidy?
I don't really know. A problem I see now with voting, I would say, I really don't know about this one.
That's okay. Something for you to think about in the future, though, right?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
I asked if there was one issue that you wish politicians would pay attention to. What would that be?
Oh, I was talking about this earlier. Politicians, this year, there aren't that many women, or that many women candidates running for president, and I wish they would pay attention to that more. A few years ago, we almost had our first woman president, and I feel like it would be actually change. It would be a good change for once to have a woman president. I don't really see the difference, but than a man and a woman. We've had men presidents for these past many years, and I would like to see more women candidates start running for president instead of having kind of the same old men presidents running.
Very good. Jeffrey, quickly, what is one issue that you wish politicians would pay attention to?
One issue I think they would like pay attention to. I mean, I wish they would pay attention to. It's like.
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that again?
No, I'm thinking.
You want me to come back to you?
Yeah.
I'll come back to you. London, one issue.
One issue that I would love the politicians to pay attention to is just other people's opinions, because at the debates, it may be like they're expressing their own opinions, but we are the voters, so we should get our hand in opinions. Even though we vote, that's not our opinion, that's just who we're voting for. So I think we should like get a share, and maybe like the people, like I think they should have somebody say on our opinion and how we think of the president, because in the debate, I don't think they show our opinions. They just show how the other presidents think of us, or how the other presidents or candidates are thinking. So it doesn't really appear as we are voting.
Very good point. All right, Madison, can you give me one issue you wish they would pay attention to? And then Jeffrey, you're last.
One issue that I would like them to pay attention to are homeless shelters, because there's a lot of space in the Bronx, space in every area, and they would rather put a different store instead of a homeless shelter. There's only a little bit of homeless shelters, and I really wish that there were more, because that means we would see less people on the streets, and we would see more people in homeless shelters instead of less people.
Very good. All right, Jeffrey, last but not least. Last but not least, one issue you wish politicians would pay attention to.
I think I wish they would like pay attention to probably it's a lot of issues like gun control. Gun control, like I wish they would, regulate not regulate, but like try to set back on the use of guns so much because of all the violence that's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very good. You all
And
have
also,
go
and
ahead.
also, actually, never mind.
Never mind. Well, that was wonderful. Gun control. We have homeless shelters. We have wanting to know more about politics. You all had dynamic ideas. And I want to thank you all for being brave and participating in this youth panel. You all are future voters, and we want you all to be well informed. So, again, I want to thank our wonderful youth panel. I will now pass on the hosting duties to co founder Dr. Baindu Bayan, who will have intimate discussion with current youth voters. But first, a word from Justin Bieber.
What's going on, guys? I'm Justin Bieber, and we are in election season. This year, I have major FOMO since I'm Canadian, so I'm asking you to vote because there's so many people like me who can't. There are so many reasons why the early vote is the way to make your voice heard this year. But here are the top reasons I'm sharing with friends and family. You should always wear a mask, but by voting early in person, you can avoid the crowds on November 3rd and stay safe from COVID-19. Getting your vote in early is the best way to ensure that your vote is received on time and processed securely. Maybe one day I'll be able to vote with you, but in the meantime, take care of yourself, the people you love, and people like me who can't vote. And get out the early vote. Swipe up to join our virtual rally on October 24th and get all the tools you need to see when your state votes early, where to go, and what you need. That way, your vote will be processed on time and your voice will be heard. And hey, tag me in your early vote selfie. I don't want to miss it.
All right. That was an awesome message from Justin Bieber. That I'm sure plenty of folks can relate to as far as having folks votes in their hands, folks that are from other countries and do not yet have the privilege to vote, as well as folks that are underage, like in our previous panel. So again, as Tiana mentioned, my name is Dr. Baindu Bayan, and I am a co-founder of Youth Speak Up. And I am excited today to speak with two young voters and would like to welcome Christian and Russell. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. We are going to just jump right in and have a conversation. I think that it was awesome hearing from our younger voters, but you guys are truly our young voters. And so before we jump right into the questions, you could just, like quickly just give your name, your age and where you attend school if you do.
I'm Christian Calhoun. I'm 21 and I go to Johnson & Wales University.
My name is Russell Moore. I'm 21 and I go to UIS here in Springfield.
Awesome. So I want to just jump right in because there are some issues as the younger folks touched on that are particularly pertinent this election season. I'm curious, how do you all feel about the way that COVID-19 has been handled nationally? I know that it's affected education, it has affected the way that you kind of work, it's affected all these different aspects of your life. And so from wearing masks to not wearing masks to being at home, what do you think about the way that COVID-19 was managed nationally?
Well, nationally, I feel like there was a definite concern for people's well-being, a need to maintain peace of mind, but also keep people on their daily lives and maintain that type of order. But naturally, people adjusted really well and governments responded the way that they needed to. Now, domestically is a different conversation, unfortunately. but nationally, we do see a lot more progress, especially in those early hot zones like in China and Spain. And we're really seeing people kind of get back into what they're used to. But it is kind of sad to see how the virus has been mishandled in our country, and how even those very bad starter zones and regions are, leaps and bounds ahead of us as far as maintaining the virus, controlling the virus, and keeping their infrastructure open and moving.
Great points, Christian. Russell, would you like to piggyback on that or expound on that? Like, how do you feel? Christian made some great points as far as the United States compared to other countries. How do you feel about the way that the pandemic has been handled?
Personally, in my opinion, at first when this all started out in March, it actually did not start in March. It was found out later, earlier, that the first coronavirus that was actually in the United States was around December of last year, due to a scientist who was brought from China to the United States to be examined and treated with. So it's not a surprise that it has outgrown to capacity that it is here. Now, nationally, as our country is, we're handling it, I won't say well, but we're handling it to the most of some people's capabilities. But domestically, I feel like it's going out of control again. My state, for example, we were just about to go into stage 5 of starting to bridge out more, and now we have to go back down to stage 3 because we just found out that we have over I literally have it right here. We have over 3,600 positive in just my county. That's not my city. That's not the state. That's my county. So when you think about it this way, COVID is I feel like COVID's getting another jump start. It's not being really, I'm not saying treated well. I'm not saying people are respecting it as well as they should be. They're kind of throwing it under the cover and saying, you know what, it's just a common cold. It's, something like that. It's like, no, it's not.
I agree. And you both make good points. I think that what we've seen this year is unprecedented. And we've actually seen this pandemic affect so many different things. And so I want to roll into a related topic, which is, how the response to COVID-19 and the conditions of being in a pandemic are actually affecting voting. And just to hear your thoughts on, how you think being in a pandemic while in an election year is affecting, voter turnout or folks being enthusiastic about voting, and just to hear your thoughts about, going out and being in potentially long lines or being in crowds, knowing there's a pandemic. How do you see COVID-19 affecting voting this year?
Well, my biggest concern is one, the spread of the virus while voting, people's fear of just going out. Like if you miss absentee ballots, early voting, and one of those people's kind of stuck on that last day, do you make the decision of, okay, I'm going to go out and go for it? Or is it super easy to just say, you know what, let me not risk it. Let me not put my vote out just for peace of mind. And, but then we lose a vote. And so that's one thing that does concern me as far as, people who don't have absentee ballots, who are trying to just get in person and do what might be more comfortable for them. Are they going to have different type of obstacles and barriers for voting? And that can really deter someone from just putting themselves out there, especially if they're already on the fence. I don't like either candidate. I'm not really interested in politics. And then you add the pandemic on top of that. That's already too many cons. So it takes a lot of conviction and a lot of determination to really put yourself out there and vote during these times. But I feel like the absentee ballots and that kind of convenient just drop ballot is a great way to get votes in.
Those are really great points, Christian. And I want to go to you, Russell. Christian brought up a great point. Like if people they were on the fence about voting in the first place, so they already were, not really enthusiastic about it. Having the pandemic on top of that, kind of make further complicate things. And so I'm curious if you're still able to keep that enthusiasm yourself about voting during a pandemic. And if you have you been able to convince your peers? What have you been able to do to kind of counteract some of that, which, as Christian was talking about, kind of that, I don't want to risk it type attitude?
What kept me really enthusiastic, what gave my motivation to vote was when I went and watched the debate, and I just was astounded of what I saw. And I was when you see something you don't like, you do everything in your power to prevent it. Now, not a lot of people do that, and not a lot of people I see go and watch the debate. They say, "Oh, this year is a weird one," like they said 4 years ago, and they was like, "I'm just gonna stay out and I'm gonna leave it alone." And now when you tie that same mentality with the pandemic, it's almost like a double negative. So there was like, oh, I should just pull out. I don't have to do anything. And like Christian said, that's a vote that's lost. And if you multiply that by cities, states, and it'll just grow as exponential, and the votes will just be one-sided at this point. My biggest concern with the voting this year is probably just the publicity with it, as it's such a controversial argument. It can go one or the other. But involving my peers, that actually has been pretty easy going on my end. Now, I'm not saying that for everybody else. I normally use terms of social media, and I show them things that they might not like, and was like, hey, we can work together to prevent this from happening. So on a peer level, I feel like it's going very well. But I feel like on a domestic level, I feel like it's overwhelming to have all this pressure, especially on a year like this, where 2020, where there's so much going on. So many people are losing their lives. Loved ones are in the hospital, or they can't even get into the hospital, and people are overwhelmed with work. And this year it's just not been. It's very overcomplicated, but.
Well, it's very encouraging to hear, Russell and Christian, that you both have been able to still, be invigorated by the process and to be involved, despite some of these things that are hurdles. And another thing, I want to just touch on before we go on to the next segment is that this year we were also in unprecedented times with civil unrest, and being in the midst of a pandemic, yet also being in the midst of heightened racial issues as far as police brutality and other issues that came up. How do you think these times of the Black Lives Matter movement and folks becoming more aware of police brutality in the United States and other issues surrounding race and racism are affecting voter turnout and affecting how people will even choose to vote? What is the influence that you think the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd incidents had on the vote?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like our community went 3 ways. And, the first is going to be those who are educated, who are woke, who understand, okay, we need to step up, step forward, and do everything we can to mitigate this and vote and change. Then we have those who decided, okay, in response to the racism, bigotry, this feeling of inferiority, you have this apathetic response, where it's, I don't care, whatever happens, what happens. It doesn't matter who you put on this pedestal. We as a people are going to be still on the back burner. So it doesn't matter. And then it's split another way, where you have a group of people who downplays the racism, who doesn't see it, who might have possibly made it out of a different situation and says, oh, well, I don't see what you see. I don't understand what you understand. And, I feel like your circumstances aren't as harsh or as degrading as you make it seem. And this type of split has forced us to kind of, it's watered down our message, and it's gonna really weaken our point in this election. And it shows, because like going back to that peer-to-peer question, Russell, I've had a completely different experience than you have. Like you know, I go to college, and you know, I'm educated enough to where I understand, okay, this is a problem. But then I come back home. I have my friends who, you know, don't really go to college and kind of work just regular jobs, have their own money, things like that. And they've kind of adopted this similar apathetic response of, you know what, look, they don't care about us regardless, so I'm not going to waste my time voting. And then you have other people who like I mean, I've talked with people who wrote in Kanye on a ballot, honestly, simply because I mean they don't care, and it's one of those they realize that, you know, there's a chance that Joe Biden may have Kamala Harris right next to him, but let's be honest, are you really going to put your whole foot into the community, or is this more of just a way to gloss yourself up as the antithesis to what Trump really is? So, both candidates haven't done enough to really make the Black community a priority, to make them feel secure in these next 4 years, as far as progress, equality, progression. Neither one of them have done that, and it's going to show, because we're torn. We're completely torn. Our community is torn in a lot of ways. Some people want to make change. Some people don't care. And some people don't see a need for change. So, and that's going to hurt us in the end.
Wow, Christian, you have brought up some really great points. Some things I hadn't actually considered. And so thank you for that. I want to just chime Russell in. I know Christian mentioned that your experiences have been vastly different as far as interacting with your peers, and especially getting riled up, you know, after, you know, Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and all the civil unrest. Just quickly, before we move on, what has been your experience in seeing any change in your age group or in you after those occurrences? Were people more invigorated to vote or to get involved in the political process?
In my experience, honestly, from peers I see, they are not. I wouldn't say the word enthused. I wouldn't say they're not enthused or motivated to vote. They're more motivated, but with the wrong intentions. They see after the events occurred, it was mostly just blindness by anger. Because when you read on the descriptions of what happened, Breonna Taylor was asleep at her house when this happened, and when you. It's hard to explain because you get too emotional when you really start thinking about it. And I don't want to sound like I'm piggybacking off of you, Christian, but you made an extreme valid point that this can go three ways: of those who are educated, those who don't care, and those who are trying to go and motivate others, but they just can't get enough support. So I'm torn as well when it's seeing it in my peers and doing my own research on the side.
Well, I've learned so much from both of you. I'm sure that our viewers appreciate your opinions. Again, we're going to have a chat with some experts, and then we're going to bring you guys back on. You know, if you have questions or things you want to propose to those experts, so stick around, and we will be back to hear from you. But thank you so much for your insights so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, panel. Don't you guys look great?
Thank you. So do you.
Loving the pink.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are getting ready to get started with this third panel. Did you guys get a chance to look at those students who are on fire? Are they not on fire?
Yes, they are. I mean, I'm just in awe at the last conversation, even the first one, the conversations that parents are having with their children. It's necessary. It's great to see that they're engaged. And the young man, the way he broke it down in that last panel, bring him back to the expert panel because
Absolutely.
He's ready for the conversation.
He's
Absolutely. Yes, he is. Well, greetings, everyone. I am Dion Johnson Calhoun, founder and visionary of Youth Speak Up. I am pleased to serve as your moderator for our third and final session. Now, we have this evening some heavy hitters on this panel. Each of them has over 15 years of experience in political strategy and implementing innovative civic and community engagement campaigns. So let's get this discussion started. So we have a question for Renee. Renee, let's just go ahead and start this conversation with you. You have over 15 years of experience serving in numerous roles, first starting your career on Capitol Hill, working for Congressman Bobby Rush and Senators Roland Burris and Richard Durbin, and even working for the chairman of the DC Council. You're so passionate about getting more women of color to enter politics and policy, entrepreneurship, leadership, and you even coach them on how to fully advocate for themselves. You've been featured in Forbes and Essence magazine for your work. So I have a question for you, Renee. How do we galvanize the youth to get involved in local and national politics?
Well, one, I want to thank everyone at this organization for putting this on today, because this is so timely and so important to make this conversation the topic of discussion a week before the election, right? Galvanizing the youth is not something we need to do. We can just look to them because they are galvanizing themselves, right? I'm actually from Waukegan, Illinois, and most recently there was a police shooting there. It's making national news, but it was about almost a week and a half ago. And actually, it was actually someone that I'm related to. And we're seeing people who've never been in activism and advocacy. I mean, I got some cousins from around the way that have never heard of the word advocating, that are advocating and in the streets now, that are speaking up because it is hitting home. This moment of what we are living through is proof of why we need to get the youth to lead, because they are doing a great job of saying what is wrong, pointing out. They just need some financial help, right, to continue doing what they're doing. So I think we as adults or the experts should just uplift their voices, continue giving them the microphone, because they're already galvanized. They are already advocating. We just heard a panel, right? The panel before us were two young men from DC, I believe, right?
Absolutely.
21 years old. And they were speaking more truth to power than I think some 50-year-olds I've heard. And I think we need to just embrace and continue giving them that energy, giving them that stage to advocate, to do what they feel is right, because they are the future. They are going to continue leading this country. So when I'm 50, they're going to be the leaders. So let's let them start this now. Let them continue galvanizing each other. Let them uplift the next generation too. I think we just need to continue empowering and giving them resources in order to do so.
Absolutely. So Renee, let's just talk about that. You heard from our first panel.
I did.
Okay, and you heard from Cassidy. Cassidy actually touched on that. She asked for women to actually serve in those positions, to go out for those leadership positions. So can you talk about how we can get more women to go out for positions in office?
Well, the number one thing I always tell people is, right, I'm hearing a lot of people who are saying, I don't like this candidate, or the lesser of two evils. Who said that you had to vote for anyone you don't like who doesn't fight for you? Why don't you run for you? You can run for office. So don't make it a decision about what you don't like and that you have to suffer and make a decision on someone who does not represent you. You run for office. You stand up and you make a decision, because there's people that are going to look to you that can say you represent me. So what I say to every woman out there are dozens of resources. There's the campaign school at Yale, which I'm a board member of. I just recently became a board member. So you can reach out to me, because we want to create a pipeline more specifically for Black women to run for office, regardless of what office it is. If it's for dog catcher of your community, I want you to run and be the best dog catcher in your community. If you want to run for president, let's get your resources to be president. Because the number one thing that prevents women, especially those of color, from being in office is money, and also the ask. Someone asking them to do it. So I'm asking all women who are listening today, run for office. Could you run today? There's your ask. Let's get you some resources. So holler at me.
Absolutely. Atiba, now I want to draw my attention to you. As the president of the Madyun Group, a government relations firm in DC, and Party Politics US, where you engage with young people to hear what they are talking about and thinking about politics, what are you hearing from our young people? I happened to scroll on your Facebook page where you talked about a young person in your building, and you talked about how she didn't want to vote because she thought that her vote didn't matter. And you were able to convince her that her vote in 2020 does matter. Tell us about that story and how you're making an impact and galvanizing communities to get out here and vote.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this distinct panel of women. And so, I'm honored to be here. In terms of what it is that we're doing, it's just about engagement. There are three things that we try to say with party politics. It's about inspiring, engaging, and uniting. And this election, I think, has galvanized so many different people for a lot of reasons. I think for 4 years, a lot of us couldn't wait to vote. So what I've tried to do is implore and to try and get my friends to ask everybody and to find one person who said they're not going to. And of course, I've been hoping that I wasn't going to find it in someone, but I did. And I was one of my concierges in my building. I walked past and I was picking up actually some of the Biden president masks that we've disseminated and sent all around the country. And I asked her because I wanted to give her a mask. And I said, "Are you going to vote?" And we also have a campaign called 2020. I won't say the word here since it's a young audience, but it's 2020 effing matters, which is what is across my shirt, because this election matters so much. And we've also had those type of masks. And so I was going to give her one of those. So I said, "Are you going to vote?" And she kind of scrunched up her face behind her mask and she said, "I don't know. It really doesn't matter, does it?" And so I took it upon myself. I just said, okay, I'm not going to pressure her right now. I'm going to come back. And I told her I'll be back. I didn't come back that night. I came back a couple of days later. And I said, I want you to watch a video. And so to our audience, if you questioning, voting, don't understand how it works, watch a video on YouTube by Yellow Pain called "My Vote Will Count." And that's the remix of "My Vote Won't Count." And I think he does a great job in these videos of explaining the process, because a lot of times people think that we're just voting for the president, the governor, the mayor. But we've got to understand that they are just figureheads in a sense. The work happens at the city council, the Congress, and the state legislature. So that all said, she watched it. I came back. I said, "Okay, so how you feel?" And she started asking me questions. "How can I find out who's going to be on my ballot?" "Okay, go to vote411.org. And she asked me some other questions, and I kind of shout out some other things. And I said, "I'll be back." I came back a couple of days later. I asked her, "Are you going to vote?" And I saw the biggest smile. Her eyes lit up. And she said, "I am going to vote." And, I've gone back there. She's voted. But it's, nobody wants to feel pressured. Everyone wants to feel like they matter. And we've got to figure out and find ways how to reach people, and everyone you reach differently. That's just that story. And, I'm sure that our panelists may have some other stories, but that was what happened with her.
And Atiba, tell me how you're reaching the youth, because just like you said, you have to reach them where they are. So just give me some ideas on how else we can engage our young people.
See this shirt? It gets people's attention. It gets young and old people's attention. And, at first it's profane. It's meant to be profane, but I think that you have to meet people where they are. And sometimes we think, oh, we've got to be politically correct. Well, we got a president who made it to office who was not politically correct. He talked about literally grabbing women by their private parts and being able to get away with it. Sometimes you've got to fight fire with fire. And I don't believe that we can keep going at this and trying to take a laissez-faire thinking that all of this is going to be fixed with voting. It's not. So how are we reaching young people? We're listening, but at the same time, we're also talking, and we're finding language and things or whatever that works for them. But the really catch for us is to listen and find out what is it that they like. What is it? So, on our social media platforms, I'm 48. I don't speak the same language as an 18-year-old or 17-year-old. I have nieces and nephews who make it very clear. The reason why I'm on Instagram is because they were when they were even younger, they were like, Uncle Atiba, you're on Facebook? No, you need to be on Instagram. And so you got to kind of we've got to find ways to meet others. And it's the same way I'll kind of end this with this. How do I reach young people? I listen. I have nieces and nephews who talk to me and they tell me, and I know that if something that I give them doesn't resonate with them, it's not going to resonate with their peers. But 20 years ago, from October 12th, 2000, 20 years ago, I sat in the office of the late Congressman John Lewis. And he gave me 3 hours of his time, just one-on-one, to ask him questions about the civil rights movement. I have to say that the work that I'm doing today, if you follow me on social media, you'll see me using a couple of phrases. Keep your eyes on the prize, about the election, and voting. And it's because in my book that I gave him, and he autographed his book for me. And in it, he wrote, to Atiba, with faith and hope, keep your eyes on the prize. And that's what I believe that this is about. It's about, we have to keep the faith. We have to have hope that we're going to, that there's going to be a better day ahead of us, but we've got to keep working and we've got to have a goal to get there. And so it's about keeping our eyes on the prize. And for me, it's about keeping my eyes on the prize. It's not just for me. It's for those that are coming behind me. And I'm inspired by the young people who have spoken before us and I'm inspired every day listening to stories and letting them talk, because they see a whole lot of things that are going on. They see where we've made mistakes. And I believe that they need our wisdom and we need their energy in order to make the country a better place.
Wonderful. Well, I want to get next to LáVita. LáVita, you, just like Renee, have had a successful career in politics and government for over 15 years. You started on Capitol Hill just as she did, first starting with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. And now you're making history as the youngest woman to serve as an at-large delegate representing the state of Maryland at the 2020 Democratic National Convention. You're also the social media manager for Women in Biden. So with your track record in politics, how does a young person go about seeking opportunities such as you have and positioning themselves to be of impact?
So I want to first start by saying thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be able to talk to young people. I will say that as a young person myself, growing up, who would have thought that this was possible, like that we would be in this position and I would be sharing a panel with such amazing people. So I'm so honored to be speaking along with you guys. With respect to getting involved and getting engaged, you would be surprised, or young people might be surprised. All you have to do is pick up the phone, volunteer, let them know you're ready. Whatever that skill is that you have, that one thing that you're good at or that you're willing to lend to others, bring that to the campaign of the elected or the candidate that you believe in, and you support them in that way. It's the lifeblood of every campaign. Elected officials or people who are campaigning, they can't knock on every door and they're not in every space. So you being an advocate is essential to ensuring that people know about them. With respect to Maryland Women for Biden, I was actually brought into that from some amazing people. When you do good work with people and they remember the good work that you've done, they call you back. And it'll open doors for you where you wouldn't have believed those doors or those rooms existed. So making sure that you're always doing quality work and making sure that you show up when you say you're going to and you're committed. You'll have people speaking behind that door for you and inviting you into those spaces. And when that space isn't being invited, like the late Shirley Chisholm, they'll make a seat for you at the table, bring a folding chair.
Bring a
so you
folding
chair.
And
let them know you are here to support, that you believe in that candidate and you're ready to work.
Absolutely. LáVita, also, you are a mom of 2 young girls who clearly can't vote yet. But what are you teaching them about issues that impact them? I also know that you had your daughters go with you to actually give your ballot. So just talk to me about the experience for your girls when they went with you to vote.
So right now is very interesting times we're in. So generally, you expect them to learn a lot in school, but we are homeschooling 100%, not virtual learning, just mom over here trying to figure it out. And one of the things that I feel I'm very passionate about is making sure that they know about government and politics. They understand the structures that we operate in, and that they are not, they're not new to it. Common Core curriculum that everybody has across the country doesn't call for this education until you're well into elementary. So I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. 3-year-old doesn't get it. She knows there's an election going on, but my 6-year-old is tuned in. And in September, I had the honor to author an essay in an anthology about the 19th Amendment, which women won the right to vote, worked very hard for, but women won the right to vote. Though it did not lend to our ancestors, African-American women, given that we've only been a part of this democracy for the last 55 years since the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But these are things that I was very proud to be able to speak on. And in that anthology, in my essay, I noted that like we completed our census, which is our civic duty, my kids sat with me at the table. Our voting plan was to do absentee voting or mail-in voting. We decided not to do that this year. The mailing in part giving some of the challenges that we've all learned about. But I sat at the table with my 6-year-old daughter and we went over each candidate on the ballot and we talked about them. She's very familiar with who the current president is and she knows that who we are voting for. So that was one of those easier ones to have a conversation about. But the judges and others who were on the ballot, our congressmen, we did a quick Google search and I taught her how to go to their website, read what their platforms were, do another Google search about some of the things that they've done in the community and how other people were receiving them so that she learns how to engage and understand media and to be able to draw her own conclusions. And again, she's 6, so she's just an introduction, but that's the way I've approached this election and teaching my kids about our electoral process.
Thank you. And now up next, we have Dyana. Dyana, I have personally witnessed you boots on the ground push major campaigns at the grassroots level by really getting the community involved and hearing directly from them. Now, there are currently 25 people running for the DC Council. And so for young people that are watching, although the vote for the president is important, the local seats that require a vote are equally as important. Dyana, what should our young people who are voting for the first time, like Christian, what should they be looking for in a successful candidate?
So first of all, Dyana. I always let people say my name wrong, but my New Year's resolution is to pronounce it for them. So it's Dyana. And I would say one thing is that we oftentimes, first of all, I'll say I was annoyed by someone who used to have to endorse candidates when I was a political director for UFCW, having to interview all these candidates, right? I felt like, we could easily narrow it down by people that had a shot at winning and people that shared our values. But as I watched the debates before the primary, it was very diverse, and there were so many candidates that were speaking to, I think, everyone, at some point. For labor, it was the first time I actually heard labor, reparations, and, social economic justice, the things that, we say in our home as my daughter sits behind me and listens in. So, I think that having the diversity allows people to feel like their vote's not being hijacked, right? that they have an opportunity to pick someone that actually represents them. I just won an election, first contested election in history, in our history, for the Metro Washington Labor Council president. And, everyone was like, hey, you guys, there are two different people that are running. Who do we vote for? And I was like, this is what democracy looks like. This is no longer about lazy politics. We have to actually do our own work. We have to identify the values and things that we care about. And we can't just vote for somebody because they're Black or because they're cute or because they share our values. We actually have to do the research and say, what have they actually done in their life? What have they done as elected official? What have they done in other positions? We have some people, especially being from DC, right, where, they come and they look at our city and they tell us how we can always do things better. But they have been in the community for less than a minute. And I mean, it's easy to walk in and say, I could do things better, but are you going to represent and appreciate the people that have been here and they're struggling to stay here? So I think, personally, and I always tell people this, personally, when I make a decision about who to vote for, I make that decision based on my values. But I'm also realistic about what an elected official can do. I remember when Obama was elected, and in his speech, as I was holding this little girl, because she was born in 2008, holding her and watching him walk across stage with his family, he said, okay, we're going to celebrate tonight, but the work's going to begin tomorrow. You all got me here. And the only way we're really going to be able to create change is if we do it together. The same people, the same energy that went into this election has got to be there with us to create the change that we want to see. So I don't have this fairy tale dream that elected official is going to, change the world. I'm going to hold that elected official accountable once they're elected. So I'm going to make sure I find somebody that I can hold accountable when I'm identifying who we want to vote for. But there's two things that I think, especially with 25 candidates in the race, right? One is who can win, and then we had this conversation with Bernie and Hillary. I actually have my sign from the convention. My heart is with Bernie, but my vote was with Hillary. I think there's, you got to be realistic about what actually is, what actually can happen. And what I do appreciate about the younger generation, I used to be a part of that younger generation, and I say whatever the hell was on my mind and didn't care what anybody thought, especially when I went to Wilson. But the younger generation can push us, and they can say things, and they can, go out in the street and protest. But the position that I'm now in, right, like I could go out in the streets, protest, and be radical, but I actually got to bring people together to create real solutions. Mm-hmm. So we need that pushing and the calling us out and reminding us to be our greater selves. But we actually have to make sure that we can elect someone that's going to represent as closest to who we are and what we need the change to look like in this city. Right. I mean, if you look at the DC City Council, I remember people were saying like vote for Black women. I was like, well, if I look back over the past 20 years, there've been Black people on the council that have given the city away to developers. Mm-hmm. So I can't just, walk the race line with that. I got to actually make sure that I'm voting for someone who's going to not only look like me, but vote for me.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. Let's jump on that. On the campaign trail, this is a follow-up question. When candidates are running for office and they're asking for our vote and our support, they make promises when discussing their key platform of priority issues. And how can we hold elected officials accountable when they actually do get in office and they make these promises? How do we check off the box to make sure that the promises that they made on the campaign trail are being met? And if they're not making those promises, how can we as voters hold them accountable? And how can we be accountable? And I don't want a politically correct answer. I want anybody to chime in on this. We don't want any politically correct answers for this one.
So I'll say one, since it's not politically correct, and I'm gonna keep it all the way real. The first thing you got to do is look at their money trail. People don't know this, but campaign finance reports. Look and see who's giving them money. If developers are giving them money, because they want to take over. They're going to owe them something. DC just passed a law, campaign finance reform, that allows folks to take small donations and then it's matched. So therefore, who the candidates that you are voting for are accountable to. I also say, look at their track record. If they haven't been in your community prior to running, look at the decisions they made. Look at their, like you said, look at their Facebook page. Who are their friends? Who are they hanging out with? If they're hanging out with, if they're at the ribbon cutting for every development that comes up, and then they're also saying they want responsible development in your community, but they've been at ribbon cuttings where there hasn't been responsible development, then you got to kind of call that into question. And I think, once you do, find a candidate that shares your values, and you also got to know what are the things that are important to you and who are the things that can solve those problems. A lot of times people will come and say, can you, get the trash off my street? Well, who actually can do that? Right? Like, what agency does that? What elected official? So we often ask people to commit to doing things that's not even under their purview. So we need to make sure that we're making realistic ask of candidates, and that we're also holding them accountable. And I would say one thing I have utilized in my old 40s, 41.
That's still young.
Right. Of course, Dyana, because we're there together. It's Twitter. Oh my God. Like, if I'm meeting with an elected official and I get out that meeting, I'll tweet at them like this: Councilmember so-and-so just said they will support this. Thank you so much for supporting it. And you put them on record. And that's something I learned from, the younger folks doing social media. But I think it's important to hold them accountable. But one of the things I think somebody said is, and I ran for office 1, 2, 3 times, never plan on ever running for office. The way that we actually hold, elected officials accountable is we are self-run, and we get people around us that will hold us accountable and remind us why we got into this fight in the first place.
Okay, so I want to jump to Melik. I want to jump to Melik since he just joined us. Hello, Melik. Melik, you advise lawmakers on strategic messaging to engage minority communities. So how do we target the discouraged voter that is just sick and tired of being sick and tired and feels that their vote doesn't matter?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me. I finally jumped on. It's been out canvassing all day. But one of the things I think is important, and actually my fellow panelists really just touched on it, is the education factor. So a lot of the things that we ascribe to politicians in general, things happen different on the local level. Even now in the context of a presidential cycle, a lot of the things that you're hearing at the presidential level are things that don't directly impact us on the ground. So you have a lot of local policies. For instance, those of us here in DC, there are a lot of local policies. So I think one of the strategies is to find out for those particular communities, not just in DC. Typically, when you have urban areas, there are common goals. There are things that are the focus, irrespective of which big urban environment that you're in. But there are things that are particular to certain areas. That could be broadband access. That could be what we're going through here in DC, even education, or even our healthcare system. I live east of the river in Ward 8, and now we're at the point where we're now going to seem as if we're going to get a fully functioning hospital. So myself, I won't have to go to Sibley all the way across town to go to Sibley for my care. So one of the strategies is to educate our electorate on what the issues are. And so if you can actually engage people around issues as opposed to a personality or a particular party, I think that you can make more inroads, because you have people who are concerned about, there in DC, education is a really big issue. So find out who the education advocates are. A lot of the discussions that we have about education don't necessarily deal with, and I'm going to get the actual term wrong, but students who are disabled is not the word. that it's a vulnerable community as far as students are concerned. But there are a lot of focus. You don't have people talking about how do you deal with those type of students in these environments. So I think organizing around issues, getting people to understand the issues that impact us at a local level. So if it's something about like affordable housing, well, getting involved with zoning, knowing what, zoning impacts us more so than a lot of things that we hear about at the presidential level. So when I'm having those conversations, about voters, yes, how do you get more voters involved? But the disaffected voters, voter apathy is a real thing. And that it exists not just in any specific demographic or ethnic or racial group. It exists all across the board. So we have to be strategic in how we engage with voters. And it's not just young voters, it's voters of all ages. But I do think trying to organize around issues and getting people to see how those particular issues can impact their lives, I do believe that is well, I know just from experience that is a strategy that works.
Melik, so you touched on the issues. Now, right now, we have two major issues that are driving debate in this historic 2020 election. Those two issues we know are how COVID-19 was handled by the current administration, and then also racial equity. Now, are these issues enough to get the folks who are sick and tired of being sick and tired out to the polls to vote?
No, not at all. These issues are important. Obviously, COVID is a once in a lifetime, experience for many of us. Will hopefully never have to deal with it again. There are a lot of things that we're learning about COVID that we just didn't know. I'm not one of those who believes that I live in a country where our government performs in an A+ style in response to really any disaster. In this case, we're talking about a global pandemic. So there are a lot of things that we're definitely going to have to learn. I don't think that I think that COVID obviously is a serious issue. I don't think that it is something that really reaches out to those disaffected voters. It's another one of those issues that we kind of hear about in an election cycle. And to be honest, I think it's the same in many ways. It's similar to that voter apathy around voter suppression. You would think that voter suppression, we hear a lot about that this is something, yes, this is something that's definitely going to drive people to the polls. They're trying to take away our right to vote. Well, it really doesn't speak to the issues that of the disaffected voters. So those who have that type of voter apathy, what do you hear from them? We don't trust politicians. We don't think that they're going to do the things that say that we're going to do. I'm still unemployed. I'm as unemployed under this administration as I was under the previous administration. My family still needs food. The schools are still bad. These are the realities on the ground. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to not just members of Congress or candidates, I try to get them to understand that you have to speak to the issues in these environments. Don't go out and people like to be critical of those who decide not to vote. But if they don't have anything to vote for, they're not encouraged to vote for anything, then what's the whole point? So I think that, yes, COVID is one of those issues that will drive some of the vote. But then the discussion of racial equity, do you mean when you say racial equity, are you talking about specifically things that we can do to level the playing field and how candidates can address that? Was that what you were saying?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So
absolutely.
I think it's going to be a lot of this is going to be redundant. And I say this, for instance, if you look at the plan that President Trump has, his complete plan versus the plan that Joe Biden has, there's a lot of overlap, and not just between the plans, but things that administrations do across the board. So a lot of the things that are in the Joe Biden plan are things that the administration is focusing on. But the question is that when we sit down, and I think a lot of times we in media, we do the public a disservice because we don't have broad pictures. So is it Dyana? I'm going to get Miss Forrester's name wrong, so I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But but when she was talking about things that affect us on the ground, those type of on the ground realities, I think we in media sometimes we do our people a disservice because we really push a narrative. So we push the narrative that helps our particular point of view. But if we actually understood that It doesn't matter if it's a Republican in office. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in office. The idea is that they serve us. So we should be able to go to these candidates, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or anyone, and say, well, this is our agenda. Make them talk to us. Make that. I don't see a way around that type of engagement where you're really forcing people's hands to say, well, that issue, and I'll be brief. I'll use an example. That issue, the police reform bills. The Democrats have a police reform bill that's out there. Republicans have a police reform bill out there. What most of us don't realize is that outside of the complete ban on chokeholds and I think qualified immunity, there's about 90-something% agreement on the two plans, with the exception of those two issues. Most of us don't know that because it's not discussed in that context. It is the Democrat plan is awful and the Republicans plan is, well, that's just not true at all. There's a lot that happens in federal government that we can benefit from, particularly those chokehold bans. Going back to what my panelist said, well, if you want chokeholds banned, that actually happens at the local level. When Eric Gardner was, yeah, I'm sorry.
Malik, let me. I want to get back to that, but Malik, let me just move on to
go
Renee.
ahead, because I can talk forever.
I'm sure you can. So, Renee, my question for you is, Malik talked about voter suppression, and I was listening to WHUR last week, and I heard Harold Fisher talk about a young person that went into the polls and had on a Black Lives Matter T-shirt on, and he was turned away. Now, what should voting day look like? What is the plan? What should be a plan for a young person that's going to the polls to vote? What are some of the do's and the don'ts for a young person that's going to the polls for the very first time?
Yeah. Well, one, I like to keep it old school. What my parents always told me: keep it simple, keep it moving. You don't have to announce everything because you are there for one mission and one mission only, and that's to make that vote count. And so, don't wear any paraphernalia. I know many organizations are 501c3 organizations as well. They are bipartisan. They are not into any party affiliation, so they don't represent a candidate. So do not wear anything about a candidate into the polls. And the reason being is you don't want no problems, right? We want to be solution-based. Always think solution-based when you're walking into the polls. So just, wear something simple, go in, do your job. And the objective is make your vote count. Be simple, keep it easy. You want to wear your Black Lives Matter? I know different states have different laws and different situations. I am not going to say do or don't wear it. That is a choice, honestly, you will have to make, and make one that's best for you and where your voting precinct is. But do what is best for you and what is safe for your life. I will say.
Can I interject?
Because
go ahead.
I just want to make this last point. We have to be real about this. People are trying to kill our kids. They are trying to take our lives. Let's not try to make a movement in a moment, two different things in this second. Let's get this objective done, right? Let's get it done. So just be smart. Be smart.
Right. So I know you wanted to jump on that. So I'm going to go ahead and have LáVita chime in on that question.
I just wanted to say, if you find yourself in that situation, the only thing that you need to do is cover it up. If you have a jacket in the car, put your jacket on. You can turn it inside out. That is the only thing you have to do. You can go back outside of that precinct, wear it proudly. But if anyone tries to turn you away, simply address what it is that concern is, the regulation is. And if it is about any paraphernalia that you are wearing, turn it inside out. Don't lose your place in line. Put on a jacket. If someone has an extra jacket next to you that you're voting with, put on their jacket, just so that you can go in and get your vote, because we don't want to have to stand in a line and we don't want to waste that time. So just like my counterpart has said, Miss Renee, go in, get the job done. Do not allow yourself to be turned away. If it is a problem with what you're wearing, take it off for the moment, put it right back on, and go fight win.
So, LáVita,
And
is there
after you vote,
a
make sure you get
number?
that election worker's name and contact information, because you want to make sure that what they're saying was accurate, because that was BS about not being able to wear a Black Lives Matter shirt unless it was a candidate's name on it. So
now, who should they call? Who should they call if they run into an issue? Is there a number? Is there a number?
There are voter protection hotlines with your state boards, with your state parties. Those can be your first places of defense. So if you find anything that you see is a suppression tactic, contact your state party. There are attorneys that are standing by always to be able to address it. If you go to MD Women for Biden, I actually have running right now each party has one, each national party, but I have currently a voter protection hotline that's nationwide. I'm sure my colleagues have others likely to share as well.
ACLU and NAACP, there's a number of them. Board of Elections, tweeted them first. I would take a picture of that person who told me that I couldn't come in with my shirt on, tweet at the Board of Election, and make sure it's public.
Okay, perfect.
Let me also say, let me say this. Let me say this just real quick. I understand the desire to pass on your message, but also think about how you feel if somebody came into that precinct like the police officer did in Miami with a "Make America Great Again" or Trump thing. So we're trying to get back to a country of empathy, or trying to get the country to be empathetic. And though we all have messages, we want to be seen. You know, there's a reason why you go into a voting booth. There's a reason why when you're getting your votes, then you're casting it, they give you a secrecy shield so that other people don't see how you're casting your vote. So we should be, I think there's a time and a place for us to march and protest. There's a time and a place right now for us to concentrate on keeping our eyes on the prize. Don't get so close to winning that you lose your place.
So now that we are on this topic, I want to actually shift gears a little bit. And I want to talk about how our youth can come up with innovative campaigns to actually bring issues to life. You know, here at Youth Speak Up, we praise our youth for innovative ideas that they have. They develop social media campaigns. They create these compelling videos and visuals and graphics. And they just really think outside of the box in creating movements. Now, Atiba, I know that you mentioned 2020 Matters. And Renee, you've also done a lot of webinars and work as a former training director at the United States of Women. So what tips do you have for our young people to start innovative campaigns of their own? And just like LáVita said, if they don't bring you to the table, you start your own. So how do we do that?
I'll let Renee go first.
Thanks, Atiba. Well, with the United States of Women, it was an initiative, of course, founded by the former First Lady, Ms. Obama. And so anytime you have something started by the Obamas, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome because they allow you to just be in the vision, right? They allow that ingenuity to be in the programming. So what we did with the Galvanize program was we just thought, what do women need in this country? And at that time, it was actually the day before Trump won the election. And so we were like, felt hopeless. Women were crying. Women didn't feel like they could do anything. And I felt like most women who were feeling that emotion were coming from a sense of they were just realizing something we already knew and that we were already empowered in it. So how can we channel this energy to the masses to ensure that this doesn't happen again, that we're all playing on the same team? So in this year, in this election cycle, we're all motivated. So we were being innovative and created the Galvanize program, which was to train over 5,000 women across the country to run for office, to start businesses, to run elections, and to also run campaigns for other women across the country. And we've done a great job. We have seen numerous classes of women taking over legislatures across the country as well as Congress. We had two of the youngest women come in the last class in Congress that were part of this programming, Lauren Underwood and AOC, and they were part of that programming. So I say to other people, think about how you can empower people and what you have as your spirit animal, if you will, that you want to pass on to other people, how you could be creative and make sure that whatever energy you want to ensure passes on to others, you can do the same. And
And let's go back to, again, I'm going to go back to that question from Cassidy. You heard it from the mouth of a babe. I want to see more women of color run for president. So, you know, yes, we are seeing more women that are actually running for office, but we need to see more. We need to do better. So, Renee, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree. We don't have enough. We do not have enough. Everyone on this panel should be running for office. I know, Ms. Forrester, you said you ran 3 times. Let's make it 4 and get you in office. Like, let's get you some resources. Let's do this. Because why? Because you have plans, you have ideas, you have innovation and opportunities and the ability to create change that has not been done yet, right? So why shouldn't you be in office? Melik, you have so much.
Well, I want to jump in.
Wait a minute, Atiba. I'm gonna come back to you, but I want to also chime in on this with LáVita. LáVita has had these positions, and she has positioned herself, as well as Renee and Dyana. So, how do we get these young people to position themselves of power in positions of power so that they are at the table leading? And Renee, LáVita, I want you to chime in on that question. And then Atiba, I'm going to jump right back to you.
So I am a millennial, and I will say that as a millennial, I've experienced a number of doors. As many ways as I've been invited in, I've been shut out.
Yeah.
And you get that, and I can't speak for the reasons why. We all have the assumptions as to why. But what I found in earnest, you know, looking to learn and be a part of the discussion, it's to turn away and to say that, hey, it's not your turn. Wait your turn. And we have to stop that. Because what we have is a failure to educate the generation behind us. When we start having conversations about how to get people involved and engaged, the first thing is to do, invite them into that space, teach them. Because when we fail to do that, and I'll take it to civics. And I'm learning more and more about the educational system and the expectations, and it's it gets watered down each year, it seems, and the requirements, expectations. But we've taken civics education and made it social studies. So we're not teaching people how to engage with an electorate, how to be knowledgeable. We're sitting at a table with people who spent their adult lives, your careers doing just this. But this conversation should actually happen sooner. Groups like yours, Dion, which brings this conversation directly to young people, needs to happen in a classroom, and it needs to be required. We need to understand how the census connects to every conversation we're having right now. It needs to be a requirement that we read the Constitution and actually know what it says and understand our protections, because that is the basis for all of our freedoms and rights, right? So that's the first part of it. But the same way we have to educate young, we also have to be open to bring people in the room to continue to facilitate the education and be willing to identify, like, if I were a member of Congress, I want to identify my legacy. I need to know when it's my time to say, you know what, I've done it. I want to bring my next person in or the next group in, and I want to teach them what I've learned, so that when they come in, they're coming and speaking and they're pushing legislation from an informed place.
Now, I will say
Black Lives Matter isn't the first one, and I just say it like this: it isn't the first; it is the one that is caught on right now, right? And where you have that rainbow push, you have the NAACP and all of our leaders who have come before. If they are engaged and involved, and I can't say they are or not because I'm not deeply involved in the organization, but that's a great example of making sure that we're connecting the dots. You know, I did a lesson the other day for Prince George's Community College, and I talked to the kids about our history of voting, and I asked, how long have we been able to participate in the electorate? How long have we had full citizenship in this country? And everybody thought since, you know, slavery ended, of course, right? And they were astonished to find out that we've only had the right to vote for 55 years. And I told them, we want to throw away and disassemble something that we have not fully engaged in and that we haven't fully gotten integrated into. And so to know the system, to know what came before us, and to truly know our history, bringing people to the table, I think is what's going to make a difference.
So I just want to touch on what you said about young people. It's not your turn. This is one of the reasons why You Speak Up was formed, because it is their time. They actually can lead. We can learn from them. And when we amplify their voices, they're going to show us and they're going to lead us the way. How do you gain the experience to be in the room if actually the door is shut right in front of your face? So this is one of the reasons why we are empowering our youth. We are uplifting them, and we are putting them in a position to pass the mantle so that they can lead. Atiba, it's on you.
I'm gonna be careful the next time I see my time. To our young people out there, first off, don't let anybody tell you no. That's the first thing. If I look back on the things that I've been able to do in life, sometimes you spend a lot of time and you talk. It's about the work is what will come through. And if you do the work without looking for someone to tell you good job. If you believe it, do it. If you believe it, you will achieve it. Now, it's not going to be easy. And I think that's the biggest lesson that a lot of people should learn, especially when it comes to campaigns. Like Renee mentioned, having the Obamas behind it. But when you start a campaign and you don't have a so-called influencer, which I'm not really that big about, I'm big about people doing the work, because the more people that you get to be involved in the work, the better the chance it's going to sustain itself. And that's why I think a movement like Black Lives Matter has sustained itself, because it's a people movement. And so I started this off earlier talking about Congressman John Lewis, and I'll just say this. In my conversation with him that day on October 12, 2000, I asked him about movements. He said, Atiba, the reason why it's called a movement is because it takes people to move it. And we had lots of meetings where there was only one or two people in the meetings for a long time before people started to take the message and went back and got someone else. And then they brought someone, and so on and so on and so on. So when you see the March in Selma, when you see the 1963 March on Washington, understand that those things did not just all of a sudden pop up. There was a lot of work. There was a lot of strategy that went on. Dyana works in the labor union movement. She knows that in terms of unions, there's a lot of work that goes on before you get a strike, before you have a strike. When you think about where legislation and why it took so long for Black women to get the right to vote, I'm gonna be honest about this. People talk about Black Lives Matter, but I would like to start talking more about Women Lives Matter. And the reason why I am a very strong proponent in this way is that whether or not it's the church, it's the community, it's the home, nothing ever gets done if you don't have strong women involved with it.
Absolutely.
If you look at the civil rights movement, think about how many meals, how many homes, how many people needed rides. It was made because of the sacrifices of women who said, we're going to put together our pennies, our quarters, our dollars, and we're going to make this happen. And this election, and I'm going to go back to 2016, and I want to say this to the young ladies that are out there. You have support from me. You have support from other men like me. You have support from strong women like this right here. I am all about breaking this damn ceiling. I'm all about crashing it, because Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 because of misogyny. There are people like Kanye West and 50 Cent and Ice Cube that are out there that are trying to distract your attention because they are weak men, they are insecure, and they are misogynists. If you don't believe me, go back and look at the words from their music, from their songs, and what they have been saying for a long time. They don't respect their mothers. And I'm not afraid to say it. I say it on any platform. I say it on any radio, any television. They don't respect women. And so I believe that the reason why our community has been held up for so long, and when I say community, I'm talking about the Black community, has been held up so long, it is because there are Black men that keep fighting against racism without recognizing we also have to fight against sexism. I am a seventh cousin of Frederick Douglass. I am listening right now to a book about Frederick Douglass. I'm listening to the whole thing about all the things that we're going through right now. It is history repeating itself. And it took
we
him
got to wrap it up.
It took him until late in life before he started talking about, before he got back to women's suffrage. But Black women got left behind then, and I'm tired of that. And this is what we have to do if we want to fix what's going on in this country today.
Thanks, Atiba. You know what? We said that we were not going to give politically correct answers, and Atiba is bringing the fire. So, Melik, I want you to continue to bring the fire, and we're going to end with these two questions for you. So, religion, race, and politics are issues that are forbidding at the dinner table and even in work settings. And they generally make people really uncomfortable. So now we're being forced to have these conversations that are getting us outside of our comfort zones. What are your thoughts on encouraging elected officials, school community, faith-based organizations, and community stakeholders to hold these conversations regularly? You heard Atiba bring the fire, not just for status quo, not just to check the box, but really in an effort to enact change.
I was still muted. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, so this is, and as you can imagine, as one of the few Black Republicans that many people even know, particularly someone who supports Trump, you can imagine that I get these type of questions a lot. And you can also imagine that I'm in many spaces where I have the only opinion. It's only one me, and it's plenty of everybody else. But I think it's just from my, having followed politics, being a Democrat all of my life until 2016. What I think one of the biggest barriers to getting us to this point is that, there is no room for diversity in points of view. There are a lot of us who have, and I say us, I mean just in general, there are people who have many ideas on how to get there. You can say for the most part, most people, their wish is, their ultimate goal is for Black people to win. There are different avenues that people have as far as how do we get there. But I think one of the biggest thing is that we have to learn to accept an opposing point of view or a different point of view. And I think in this political climate that we're in, it's so toxic that we're really not willing to listen to anything that does not confirm with our point of view, our worldview. So whether that's on the right, whether that's on the left, most of us, and especially with the advent of social media, we exist in tribes. So everybody moves to their own side of the kitchen of the dining room table, if you will, when it comes to issues. But I think that we have to do much better, just as adults, and we have to actually teach our kids that we need to be able to listen to each other, because most of us want to get to the same place. And I think that that's something that definitely we can learn from and do better. And it will actually make the discussions around race, politics, gender, sexism, all of those much easier. But as you can imagine, I've been in a lot of uncomfortable conversations with people.
So Melik, how does an elected official or candidate who's running for office, how do they build trust and relationships and build community, particularly in the African-American community, when we are fighting to dismantle institutional racism and police brutality, and we're taking on this Black Lives Matter movement? A lot of times people don't get involved is because they don't trust elected officials. They don't trust that they have their backs. They don't trust that they're going to push their issues. So how do we build that trust in someone who is elected to represent our needs?
Well, so there are two things, and I say this a lot when dealing with candidates. So if the candidate doesn't have connection to the community themselves, then they need a very good surrogate. They need a very good surrogate. And that is someone who can go into the community and not just BS, because we get a lot of BS from politicians all the time. But this, and when I say the community, I'm talking in this specific instance about the Black community. But the Black community is no different than any other constituency that's out there. We're not some Gordian, we're not so hard to figure out. So candidates have to engage on the issues that we say matter, not what happens don't pay attention to what's happening at the national level. Focus on local politics. If education is the issue in your city, then you have to go in there, find out who those education advocates are. If getting more women in politics is your issue, then find those organizations, those people who've actually been doing the work. A lot of times you find people get into these spaces and they try to reinvent the wheel. It's not necessary to reinvent the wheel when you have people who've already been keeping the wheel turning anyway. And so I think encouraging candidates to reach out to these organizations, and we know there's so many organizations out there doing what some people call a lot of redundant work, but there are a lot of organizations doing a lot of hard work. And so candidates really have to understand the needs of the community before they can actually do anything serving the community.
Okay, so my last question is for Renee. So Renee, we know that you've presented many webinars for community groups on how to lobby elected officials. And for our youth that are watching, lobbying is basically when you go into that room and you advocate on an issue that you care about, whether it's you making a call for action, whether it's you asking for money in the budget for programming. Renee, how can you position our youth to walk up in those walls of government and effectively lobby on an issue that they care about that impacts their quality of life?
One thing I will always say is, one, know who you're talking to, do your due diligence and your research, and before you even go into the room, have a plan. Meaning, who is saying what, who you're talking to about what, and what is the goal out of the conversation from what you're having with that person. Meaning, if you're going to go advocate because you guys want a stop sign at the corner of your block, then hey, make sure you know what you need to do, what committees are part of getting stop signs erected, who's in charge of that committee, what is the process of doing it. And all of this is on the information superhighway called Google. And so you can find that very easily. You can type in, how do we get a stop sign in our city? And have everything you need for you at your fingertips. Absolutely. Before you even walk into that meeting. When you go in that meeting, be confident, be firm, do not waver. You know what you want, and you know exactly what you want. So do not accept no, ask for firm dates, check-in points, when you could come back and meet again, when you're going to reschedule for the next time you're going to meet, and also who is the point of contact in the office that you're going to be able to talk to when you need to check in. And make sure their name, their email, what's their phone number? Okay, and which office are they located in? Okay, what's the room number of the office? Make sure you get all those details. Get their business card. Make sure you have some sort of information and contact card. Because what you want to make sure is you have a record of what's going on. Send an email afterwards and tell them, thank you so much for meeting with us today about our issue. Per our conversation, we discussed XYZ. You told us we are going to meet again the second week of November with this staffer at this time. And make sure that you hold them accountable, which is one of the key words we kept saying tonight. That's how we do it.
Absolutely. So we're gonna call in our young people back on so that they can actually get in on the conversation with our experts.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing, guys? So
we have Christian and Russell. So before we get to Christian and Russell, I know Christian is going to be voting for the very first time. And I want to know, what should his day look like? Like, LáVita, I want you to chime in on this question. What should his plan be for that day, voting for the very first time? What should Christian be doing? What should he look out for?
So I want to say, before you go to the ballot, go online and pull down the questions that are going to be on your ballot. You should be doing your research in advance so that when you get in there, it's not trying to figure out who folks are, but you're just executing what you've already researched, right? You go in, make sure you have, depending on your polling station, you might need to bring a chair, a folding chair, something to drink, make sure you have some food. And be willing to wait. Keep your mask, your gloves on. Don't let anybody get too close, and don't get engaged in any foolishness, because you are there to execute that one mission, and that is to vote on that day for your first time. But I think the most important piece of that is doing your research in advance. Know what's on the ballot, know how your position
Christian,
on
you
it,
had
and
a
be ready to
question.
vote.
Just jump right in. This is a conversation. So we are gonna, you guys wanted to hear from them. This expert panelist said, bring them back on. I know LáVita said it. So Christian, jump in. This is a conversation. As you can see, these folks are not giving the status quo political correct answer. They're bringing the fire. So go ahead, Christian.
Well, what struck me was actually, out of all the speakers, was Melik, because I'm gonna be honest, I've never had the opportunity to question a Black Republican before, and you know the reality of it is, you know, Biden said, "Oh well, if you're not voting for me, you're not Black," and that's the reality is that's not the case. You know what I mean? We're all individuals. We all have our own opinions and our own voices. But I am interested in, you know, you said you were a Democrat for a long time, and that's, I'm sure, one thing that people when they talk to you kind of goes over their head. They kind of see you as, oh, you're a Black Republican, but they kind of miss the fact, no, you were a Democrat. You were on the other side and had that experience for a long time. So I want to know what happened in 2016 that catalyzed that switch for you. What was some of your biggest motivation?
Well, so it actually started before. Thank you for the question. I get that a lot. So it actually started before 2016. I would actually say that probably it was I voted for Obama. I campaigned for him in 2008. But for me, I realized that there were a lot, and actually my fellow panelists talked about this earlier. There were a lot of expectations that I had of the federal government, and Barack Obama was the head of that federal government. I started to realize that a lot of the expectations that I had of a president of the United States are things that really are dealt with on the local level. So as so many of us, I projected a lot onto Barack Obama. And I said, oh, well, you know, this is the first Black president. Oh, Black people about to win. All Black people about to win. But that's just not reality. That's really just not how it works. And so I became disaffected with what I saw a lot that was going on with the Democratic Party, where I felt as if each election cycle, I was made to fear whoever the Republican candidate is. So whether that was Kanye West talking about George Bush, you know, not liking Black people or whatever, you know, he's a totally different person now than he was back then in 2005. But for me, I honestly started to reevaluate my expectations of a president, and more particularly the federal government. And I realized that I actually, my views more so align with the conservative worldview than the more progressive or liberal view on the Democratic side. And so I started out as a Jeb Bush supporter, then a Chris Christie supporter, a John Kasich supporter, and then Trump ended up being the nominee. But I actually started out as a Jeb Bush supporter because I'm a big fan of the Bush family.
And what do you see in this image? Because you obviously saw things in the Democratic Party that were unsavory, and you felt like the community wasn't being as affected as it should have been. You know, and I kind of see the president as more of a figurehead, you know, in a lot of ways when it really shouldn't be. So where and you said we were supporting Trump. So how do you think that Trump is actually different? You know, and in what ways, like, what are you supporting him for?
Well, at the end of the day, Trump is a politician just like so many others. I often say that there's a lot of overlap between administrations as far as things that they want to target. So if you look at the things that Obama targeted when he was in office, there are many of those things just continue throughout administrations. So for me, particularly with Trump, there's a lot of, you know, I always say, and I'm open about it, I would not go to Trump's church. I would not probably want to just, you know, hang out and drink. Well, he doesn't drink, so I can't say that. But, you know, I realize that Donald Trump is not the most likable person. But what I'm looking for Donald Trump are actual policies. So when we look at the landscape of what those policies are, and things particularly that where black people have made progress under this administration, a lot of that is a continuation of things that government has already done. So once you take that out of the equation, you get into, well, what is it specifically? So what I actually like about, despite the things that many unlikable things about Donald Trump, what I like about him is that, he wants the win. So however he gets the win, he's okay with it. And so I'm personally okay with not having an empathetic president of the United States, because empathy does not always translate into action on the ground.
So we want to get to Renee. Renee wanted to also jump in on that, Malik. Renee, what are your thoughts?
No. I got a lot of questions, but Malik, I'm not sure how far we can go into this. Christian and Russell, thank you guys so much. And Christian, you're definitely asking the right questions, because I've met a lot of Black Republicans, and you're asking the questions that I have definitely in my head right now. And Malik, to your response right there, I'm very confused, because as a Black man who was watching Black men slain in the streets every day on the news, on repeat, I'm kind of confused how that wins for you. So how can you talk about these issues in a racial, not even equity, but a racial racism, killing of Black boys, Black women standpoint that we see in a leader of our country?
Well, I don't think that Donald Trump is responsible for any of those killings of Black men and boys. And I think we probably don't want to go down like this really political rabbit hole in response to Christian's question. Maybe we can have those conversations offline. But there are many things. If you're going to ask me, what are the things that I like that this administration has done, I can go down a list of things, which is separate from what Donald Trump's personality is. But I just don't want us to get bogged down on this call for you about talking about.
Right. And we're not going to do that. And we're not going to do that. So we're going to shift gears. It's okay. We're going to shift gears, and we're going to get to Russell, because I'm sure he has a question. So we're shifting gears now. Russell, what do you I'm sure you have a lot on your mind right now. So what do you have to say, Russell? You can unmute, Russell.
Sorry, my thing. First off, thank you again for this opportunity. This is the once in a lifetime, and I'm gonna take advantage of this as much as possible. Now, I want to go back to help me pronounce your name, Mr. Atiba, correct? Atiba. I'm so sorry. Now, when you mentioned earlier about a way you portrayed and motivated somebody to vote, you gave him a second to come back, think about it, and then you gave him a reference. You gave him that song. Now, for someone like me, I love music, so you gave them a different language. You spoke to them in the way they understood. My question, not just to you, but to anyone on the panel who can answer this: how can you motivate somebody that doesn't speak the same language as you to vote?
That goes back to the question, Atiba, meeting them where they are. And this is what we've been talking about this whole entire time, whether it's through dance, whether it's through rap, whether it's through art, whether it is through a compelling video graphic. You guys like social media, so that's how we reach you. He has innovative campaigns. 2020 effing matters, right? That's something to grab your attention. So Atiba, jump on it.
So when I started Party Politics, I'm a lobbyist. I work in public affairs, and I work with Fortune 500 and 100 companies. And working with elected officials, we would do events, especially education pieces. When I was at the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, we recognized we needed to do things in a different place where it would attract people and what they would want to come. So we're starting to do this with people on the ground. It was, well, how do we incorporate music, art, comedy, all of that? And so you see that the name of our company is called Party Politics. The play on words, people think about it from a politics standpoint, but the play on words is really that our tagline is we put the party, the fun, before the politics. And that's how we attract people. So it's about, artists, comedians, even on my podcast, one of my co-hosts is a comedian. We have someone who talks about entertainment news, because there's politics and all of that. Often we just get bogged down in this idea that politics is the stuff that we see between Republicans and Democrats, but it's far more than that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Russell?
No, and I know that answered it perfectly. It gave me a better mindset. So now I can go back out into the field, and if I meet somebody who doesn't see to me eye to eye, we can have a more civil conversation on either their level or my level, and we can find a mutual ground to stand on. Because when you're trying to motivate someone who never voted, never learned anything about politics, or doesn't even know who's running for president, it's kind of hard to motivate them and say, hey, you need to go vote. They're going to be like, who am I voting for? What am I voting for? What are they going to do for me? What am I supposed to vote for? So it brings so much confusion, but it brings a lot of confusion. But what you're doing and what other people are doing here is giving it a lot more clarity and more, it cleans the lenses a lot more.
If you think about this, music, right?
Mm-hmm.
How an artist is paid is political.
Yes.
It's someone who has come up with a policy within a company that determines how much an artist is going to get paid. That is the same thing that goes on within organizations and companies, Hollywood, where a person stands. I mean, I've talked to African-American actors and actresses who tell me about the racism that's there. It's all there. There's politics and everything. If we're not sitting at the table, then we're on the menu. So, so we've got to stay engaged in this process. Melik said that he's a Republican, he's voting for Trump. I just totally disagree with that, but that's his reasoning. And so having that conversation is what party politics is about. It's how we bring people together from different sides to have these conversations. And sometimes if we talk long enough, we'll find something that we find that there is some common ground. I was a registered Republican. I'm an independent. And so I'm always trying to figure out what's that middle ground. So where you are, Russell, in terms of how you're trying to reach your peers, your friends, best. But yeah, music and art, food is a great way to bring people together.
So Russell,
can I interject just real quick? I'll just say that listening.
LáVita, hold on for just 1 second, because I wanted to jump into Russell's question as well. So Russell, you brought up ways to motivate our youth, especially those that are not aware of the whole political process. They're not educated, they're not informed. So as a youth in college, what are some ways that we can motivate them and just basically educate them just from your lens and meeting them where they are? You have folks that are boots on the ground that have done this work. So I want to hear your ideas for them because they can push those initiatives.
Well, one thing that we have done that actually has been very productive for those that are in my college level. I'm a part of a BSU with the Black Student Union in my campus, and we do open mic night at least 2 or 3 times a month, and it gives people a chance to come out, show their talents, and or speak on a subject that they want to do. And when people bring all these different subjects together, it gets the ears working, and over time, what was like a few people doing performances and dances, now it's over there at the tables. People are having those independent discussions. Business cards are being flied over, and then now we have a connection made. As I believe it was Miss Dyana. I believe she said. I believe it was Miss Dyana who said, document what happened. I believe it was you or Miss Johnson. But when you have
it was Dyana.
When you have that experience with someone, not only do you remember it and document it, but if they come back, that means something clicked. And this is something that we've done not only with just open mic nights. We do sometimes we have block parties. Like we designate one someone volunteers their house, and we have a whole party there, and conversation will come up, or we'll have marches and et cetera, posters, Instagram, you name it. But I think the biggest one that was the most successful has probably got to be the open mic nights and probably the block parties, because it just brings everyone.
Okay, LáVita, let me go ahead and have you jump in on the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just going to say, in most of these conversations, it's better to listen than to talk. A lot of the times when we have conversations, we listen to respond and not to hear. And often when you listen to the perspective and you understand the position that the the person you're speaking to is coming from, you're able to hear what would best resonate with them, whether it be the music piece in the yellow pane. You understand that that's their love or their interest, or it be the dancing, like Miss Calhoun, who motivates us all. It can be from any number of places, but if you listen to understand the position of other people, I listen to Melik, and again, while our views are not consistent with one another, I was very much also appreciative of Christian's question because I was able to hear from him his perspective. And maybe, you know, down the line, we can get him back to another side or in the middle at least. We can make him, you know, he could be a blue dog Democrat or something, where, you know, you understand the conservative side, but you believe in some of those freedoms and liberal values. We'll talk, hopefully. But it's best always, in my opinion, to listen for understanding and then to respond, and being knowledgeable also about the resources that are out there. Atiba was able to go to that yellow pane piece, and I think Atiba said his nieces and nephews got him on Instagram. So while that might not have been his medium before, because Yellow Pane's video was all over Instagram, right? He was able to have a point of reference because he is operating in different spaces and staying informed. So stay informed, listen to understand, and make recommendations from that perspective. That's all I wanted to share.
No,
LáVita, I really like your message about just listening and not being so quick to speak. So I told Christian and Russell that they had the floor and they were going to be engaging with some heavy hitters. Christian, now that you have the floor, if there's anything that you want to get out in terms of a takeaway for our youth, and then also our stakeholders, our experts that are on this panel, what do you want to drive home? Especially right now where we are with this historic 2020 election coming up. What do you want the messengers to walk away with from this specific virtual town hall meeting? You're on mute.
Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
But to be honest, I think the biggest takeaway is for adults to understand that, or older adults to understand that we're not hiding here. We understand what the issue is. We understand what we're fighting. We understand the war that we're in, and we're fully prepared to fight it. The issue is that we aren't in the position to fight it. We want to fight it. We want to, fight tooth and nail. We're just not in the position that you guys are. And even though we want to get there, we can't do it alone. So all I ask is that continue to feed into the youth and invest into the youth, and grow young minds. If you see a young person who's kind of stagnant and isn't really trying to push himself, push his values, his knowledge, bring that person close, because we need as many people on the front lines as possible.
Russell?
My biggest thing for those who are young is educate yourself, because there is a lot that you can grasp just on your own, and then in Jesus Christ, in those complications, you come to people who are actually in the fight, those who can fight for us, and ask for advice. So when it's now your time to shine, you'll be ready for it, because we have all this pent up energy, and we don't know where to release it at. So my biggest thing is just to educate yourself and to humble yourself. That's my biggest thing. Know where you are and where you need to be, so you know exactly where you need to go. I think somebody said it earlier. Don't make this movement a bad moment.
Right. And so for our panel, you're hearing directly from our youth. You actually have these youth right in front of you. What message do you want to drive home to Christian and Russell? I just want to take 20 to 15 seconds to go through each panelist, and I want you to take the floor to leave a message for Christian and Russell. Renee?
So I would say, if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try to suppress it. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try to kill us for it. If your vote didn't matter, it wouldn't have been 1965 until people were given the right, being Black men and Black women. It wouldn't have been Asians later. It wouldn't have been Hispanics then after. We have come a long way, but it hasn't been that long. We want everyone who has the ability to go out and vote because it does matter. And they're still to this day trying to take it away because why?
Right.
It
Atiba,
matters that much.
And we got 10 seconds. Everybody, 10 seconds.
Sorry, this is your opportunity. There have been generations of people who have fought for the right to vote. It's up to you all now to redeem the dream that we've been fighting so long for. We are that close. We fought too long to turn around now. So just get in the fight. It's not going to always look the way you want to. Democracy is messy, but it is fulfilling when you get involved. Just like winning a Super Bowl or a championship of any sort, that's what this is. So if you want to win, it's about building coalitions and staying in the fight and staying in the game. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Melik? You're on
mute. So what I would say is to get involved in the don't just vote, get involved in the political process, because voting can become a task that you just do all the time. Get involved in the political process and take advantage, seek out opportunities outside of your comfort zone. And that's actually probably the advice that I would give.
I would say that it's always your time to understand the process. There's a conversation about dismantling it. I would encourage you guys to learn it, get involved in it, to learn it from the inside so that you can learn how to change it. We've only been doing this for 55 years. We've only been at full rights. And just know, though it's been 55, the same way that we had it in 1900 when we had 7 African Americans in Congress and they took it away. And for a generation, we would not have another Black person in office, and that Black men would be fighting for a right to have, again, the right to vote that they lost because they legislatively took it away from us. So just because we have it, don't take advantage of it. Make sure you use it and make sure you're paying attention to who you're putting in office because our rights are still fragile.
Dyana?
I would just say I'm 41 years old and I was elected the youngest president of the Metro Washington Labor Council. I was told to wait in line, told it wasn't my turn. People were like, we need young people in the room, but stay in your place. I never ran for office. I ran for ANC the first time because the young Black boys in my block were getting locked up for doing the same thing the white people were doing in my block. So I went to the ANC meeting and I realized nobody looked like me that was a commissioner. And there were people in the audience that were complaining about the people that lived in the neighborhood. So I ran for office. I won twice. I ran for delegate. Why? Because I realized there was nobody actually from Southeast, a single mom in labor that cared about the city the way I cared about the city. So I never got into this to run for office. I do not ever want to run for office again, Lord. But I would do it if I have to, if there's no one there that's representing us. So I would say follow your passion. Don't do it for a title, because the title and the victory will come even when you don't. They had to talk me into running. I didn't want to do this, but I'm here. So, and you all are my inspiration. And I say, come into that room and say, you're not just there to serve, but to lead. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. In closing, we would like to thank our panel of experts who joined the discussion tonight. We thank you for engaging and educating our youth. That is where we have power and impact, by providing a platform for our youth to lead, to speak up, and to use their voice. To our youth panel, you never cease to amaze me. You can clearly see that our youth are passionate, they're vocal, they're aware of the issues, and all we need to do is empower them by listening to their thoughts. When our youth speak, we better move. So I end with this call to action for our youth. We want to hear from you. Your voice matters. You are valued. We want to continue to hear about the issues that you care about, and we're going to put those issues to the forefront and position you to be in the room with heavy hitters like LáVita, like Renee, like Atiba, Dyana, and Melik. These folks are on the ground and in the room to enact change. So This is what I want you guys to do. I want you to join the conversation. To our youth that are watching, follow us at You Speak Up One on Instagram and Facebook. Join the movement. And I just want to end by saying to my co-founders, let's just give a shout out to our co-founder, Dyana Adams, who handled this production this evening. Wasn't it of high quality? And we also thank our co-founder, Dr. Madyun, for bringing our youth adults together to engage them. Look, we had Christian and Russell on this panel, fire. They are the next. And look at what they brought to this discussion. We thank our youth. We thank our babies that started the conversation out. And this is not the last. We want to hear from the youth. We want you to bring us ideas about what you want to talk about next so we can bring those issues to the forefront. Again, good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.